Welcome to Speaking in Your Basement. Something you've probably seen on my page, or if you scroll down, you should see it, at least if you're on the Facebook page. A little gag someone sent out. Friend, I thought you were dieting. Me, I am. Friend, you just had 3 donuts. Me, but I wanted 4. See? Dieting. Sometimes it is about like that. It's not you're doing anything heroic. You're not cutting out the bad thing entirely. You're not doing all the good things you think you ought to be doing. You're just doing a little bit. And we make a joke of it, but it's literally been there for me. Sometimes it wasn't, I'm going to cut all this out. It was like, okay, I want 4, items of junk. I'm just going to eat 3 items of junk. You start where you can and you work forward from there. One of the most interesting places to start is just simple awareness. You go a really long way with this. Where it got really interesting for me, I lost weight a few years ago. And if you've looked at any of my older content, you've probably seen me talking about weight loss. It's useful stuff, but I got kind of bored with it and moved on to something that I think I'll stick with for the rest of my life, speaking and communication. But from highest to lowest, I lost just short of 100 pounds. It was about 98 pounds. And I kept the majority of that off. And what was most interesting, at first it was just tracking carbs. I was tracking, trying to stick to around 100 carbs a day. And even though I was screwing it up frequently, just sticking there was a very solid start for me. That took about 28 pounds off me. Then I continued. I started adding in microfasting, and with that, over maybe another year, I lost most of the rest of the weight. I went from 258 to, I think, around 230 with just counting carbs, just limiting carbs. And I had a cheat day, by the way. So it's like 6 days a week I'm keeping carbs to 100 or less, more or less. Oh, I'm hitting that exactly. And then on cheat day, I just eat whatever I wanted for the whole day and then go back the next day. And so that took about 30 pounds off me. Or 28 pounds. Then from there, I started adding microfasting 2 days a week, and that brought me all the way down to around 180, I think was my lowest with that. And then, after I got down to 180, I cruised back up to like 190, I would say I was averaging at. And then I started paying a little more attention. I recognized I'd kind of gotten lazy on my diet, and I was still kind of following the 100 grams of carbs a day thing, but not exactly. And I decided to track. I was also posting this on Facebook and Instagram. And so I started posting. I thought a diet journal has always been an interesting idea. I've never actually done it. Let me try it and I'll actually post it. And of course, posting it will encourage me to be consistent with it. So I did, and I posted a diet journal every day for, I think, 6 days a week. I don't think I bothered posting it every cheat day. I did a few just to show the excesses of cheat day. But so 6 days a week for, I can't remember, like 5 or 6 months, something like that. And the interesting thing, within the first 2 months, I lost an additional 15 pounds. And part of the reason this is interesting, when I started losing weight, I was 40. By the time, maybe 40, 41, by the time I tried this diet journaling thing out, and I was already counting the carbs, but I was counting them in my head. So I'd already started counting things. And then I counted for the microfasting, I counted calories, but I counted them in my head. Well, then I actually started writing things down for this diet journal. And in my 20s, the lightest, when I'd lose weight in my 20s, the lightest I ever saw myself was 175. And I thought that was going to be probably my hard cutoff for adult life. Like I was never going to get lower than 175 because, when my hormone profile, my youth, when everything was going for me as best as it was going to be, at least in terms of age, 175 was the lowest I could manage. When I got out of U.S. Army infantry basic training, I was right around 175. Other times I had worked to lose weight on my own. Same thing. I'd gotten down to 175. That was the lowest at least. So I thought I'm never going below that. When I started diet journaling, within the first 2 months, I got down to 160, which, as soon as I got under 170, but my wife thought I'd gotten too skinny. I kind of felt like she was right, but I really wanted to see washboard abs. I never saw him. I know, I'm disappointed too. But I never got to see the washboard abs, but I kept telling myself, like, I'm close, I'm so close. I got down to 160, and that was surprising to me because 15 pounds lower than my lowest weight when I was in my 20s. And I achieved this at around like 45, 46, something like that. 46, I think. And I don't know, how is that possible? Well, the answer is accountability, documentation. That's a good place to start. Now, I started with the joke, 3 donuts as opposed to 4, dieting, right? And just taking a small step in the right direction. But sometimes a small step is just something you're doing to be a little more aware. It's one thing to just observe something and keep track of things in your head. That's useful. It's absolutely useful. It carried me a long way. But when you actually start writing it down, you can do this in an app. I like using pen and paper, but when you're writing it down, as long as you have a way you can look at it, you can look at it at the end of the day, you can look back over it at the end of the week if you want to. You can see trends. Now, the interesting thing is you might want to look at your data and put it out either on a spreadsheet or kind of, make a chart where you can kind of get ideas of what's going on over time. That can be useful. But if you're just writing it down, if you're just going through the practice of documenting it, you're going to notice more doing that than just doing it in your head, than just tracking it in your head. It's awareness and it's a little more work, and so it's more awareness. You are putting more attention into it, so you're going to tend to get more out of it. Now, that's not a guarantee you'll lose more weight or make more money or whatever else it might be, but I don't know. I don't want to guarantee anything, but I don't know how you could do this with any sincerity at all and not gain more clarity on the situation. In fact, that's just based off thinking through this. I want to make that my next goal. I'm not really worried about my weight currently, but I do want to find something with either my business or my speaking, something in this area to keep track of, to start documenting, and to see what I can see, to see what I can get more clear on. Because I haven't gotten all the success I want in this area, and I suspect if I gain more clarity, I'll get closer than I am now. Maybe I won't be, freakishly rich as, I dream to be, but a little bit closer, or at least a little more clear. I'll take that. That's a worthy step forward. So that's going to be the next thing I'll be attempting to figure out. But I bring this up just to remind you that the habit we've been talking about all along, your daily speaking practice, if you're paying attention, if you're consistently practicing, that's already valuable. If you want to get a little more awareness with that, you can just start documenting things. Just write anything down to begin with. It could be as simple as spoke for this long. Spoke for 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Cool. And you just make that. You could do it as simple as having a calendar hanging on the wall and just put a check mark in each box of the days that you actually do your practice. Or you could put, SP for speaking practice or whatever else you want to do, but just write it down. Actually go through the motion of documenting it somehow, and then just look back over the month. When you look back over the month and see how many days are filled in, of course, do it at the end of the first week, do it at the end of the second week. If you get to the end of the month, and let's say you miss 3 days, 3 days out of a month, that's basically 10% of a month. So if you only miss 3 days over a month, that's a 90% success rate. What does that feel like to have a 90% success rate in something? To me, it feels like a hell of a good start. Now, I know what people want. They want to be a badass at interviewing. They want to be a badass at sales. They want to be a badass at chatting up the guy or girl of their dreams. That's cool. And I encourage you to work towards all that. But what that generally looks like starting out is just being consistent with some simple practices. And if you can choose to be consistent with the practice, if you can pay attention. Now, it's interesting when I talk to people about writing things down, that's where I get the most resistance out of anything. I talk about all kinds. When I was talking about weight loss, I had lots of things that aren't exactly conventional. Eating saturated fat and not worrying so much about fruits and vegetables. A lot of the stuff you hear is the stuff you're supposed to do. That wasn't the stuff that worked for me. But all that, even with people that didn't like it, didn't get like the responses that you should write things down got. that you should write things down, that you should keep track of it, that you should do a diet journal, that you should have this increased level of accountability on yourself. That got the most crazy looks, the most that got more pushback than anything else. Sorry, I've got a little one in here jumping on the trampoline while I'm delivering this. That got more pushback than anything else. Just the idea you've got to be accountable. Not accountable to anybody else. You haven't got to post it on social media. Is there a certain level of motivation or social approval that comes with that? There is. But you don't need that. Really what you need is you be accountable to you. You be a little more clear with yourself. You be a little more honest with yourself. You actually being willing to look in the uncomfortable area and say, yeah, this is how much I'm eating, or this is how much I'm keeping up with my goal of exercise, or this is how much I'm keeping up with my goal of speaking practice. Be willing to look at that. Be willing to look at it over time. Be willing to look at the last month, to track things so you can look over the last month. How consistent have I been? Once you're being consistent, you're doing it almost every day. Maybe you want to make sure it's always at least 5 minutes. You say, okay, how many days do I go over 5 minutes? So in addition to writing down, you did your practice, you write down 5:15. So I spoke for 5 minutes and 15 seconds today. I've only got in 4 minutes this day. And then you're increasing the level of accountability. It's like you're building these habits up layer by layer by layer. And your willingness to do the things that virtually no one is willing to do is going to do amazing things for you. In terms of long-term success, it's very powerful. But just in terms of you showing up as a rare person, it's very powerful in that way too. The people that are willing to do this have a different vibe. There's something special about someone who's willing to go to the places that frighten most people. Now, if you're trying to get comfortable with public speaking, you're already going to a place that frightens most people. If you're willing to take that to another level, be accountable with it. Be accountable to yourself. Again, you can use other people, but it is most important you be accountable to yourself. If your life is satisfying to you, but not to other people, you're doing all right. If your life is satisfying to other people who mostly don't even care about you, but it's not satisfying to you, that's one definition of hell. I don't want that for you or for me or for anyone. Be accountable to you. Be willing to be accountable for you, to you, even if that means you have to go through a little bit of discomfort. So get consistent with that practice and do something to document it. And as you do, you'll get better and better and better in far more ways than you can imagine right now. And then, once you're being honest with yourself, you can cut out at least one donut. I'm Ben Langley. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. We will talk again soon.